Welcome back to Leeds Lately. Today's video is going to be another scouting report. So before we get into it, if you could just hit that button down below, you'll be able to see every time I upload a video, and it's been a lot recently, so make sure you hit the like button for that. Today we're going to be looking at another Italian defender. Now this one was suggested, obviously you'll have seen the video the other day about Simone Canestrelli in Serie B in Italy, and I talked to Andrea Russo, of course, of being on this channel on Dream Teams, and of course been on Joe's channel a load of times, and I talked to him about Simone Canestrelli, and somebody who he also suggested was Ilario Monterisi from Frosinone. Now Frosinone, I think, have just been relegated to Serie B, so this player could be available on a fairly cut price, let's say, probably around 4 to 5 million euros. He's got Serie A experience. He's a little bit different to Canestrelli that we looked at the other day, but similar in some ways as well, and would also be a right-sided centre-back who would come in and deputise for Joe Rodon. He is only 22 years old. He scored 2 goals and got 2 assists in Serie A last season, so it shows that he does like to get forward a little bit as well, even as a centre-back, which is quite interesting. And is a bit of a threat from corners as well. His actual value at the moment, let's go into that, 2.8 million euros. But the last time he was sold was actually in July 2023, and that was for 500,000 euros. So his value's gone up quite a lot after having one season in Serie A, and he made a little bit of a name for himself. He wasn't the best player in the division by a long way, but for a young centre-back up and coming, he did show a lot of things that are very, very promising. Now, assists for a centre-back, 0.12 per 90. It puts him in the 97th percentile. There isn't many centre-backs. There's 3% of centre-backs that got the same as or more than him in terms of assists in Europe's top 5 leagues. And let's bear this in mind as well. We said this when we had the Jayden Bogle announcement, and we talked about what kind of player Jayden Bogle might be and how he might fit into Leeds United. We talked about his statistics, and we said, to be fair, he's being compared to the Premier League and Europe's top 5 leagues when he was in a relegation fodder side, and so was Ilario Monterisi. So you've got to take these with a little bit of a pinch of salt. So there are some things that are quite good in here, but there are also some things that are a little bit worrying, let's say. So his passes attempted, 61.08 per 90, puts him in the 63rd percentile, so just above average for passes attempted. But when you consider that you're playing in a team who is going to be under the cosh most of the time because you're playing against much better opposition, you're going to have long periods of time where you don't really have the ball. So for him to still manage to get 61 passes per 90 is pretty good, considering what kind of team he was in. If he was to come to Leeds United, you could easily see that go up. That's one of those statistics where it's like, well, it depends on the system, it depends on the quality of your team compared to the rest of the league. So that one's that's a lot of room for improvement on that one, and it certainly could be an easy thing to improve. Pass completion, 80.4%. Puts him in the 18th percentile, so that's really, really low. So that is a little bit worrying for that statistic, especially when you consider that what we talked about in previous videos, when you progressive passes, if you've got high progressive passes and a bit of a lower pass completion rate, it means you're taking risks. It means you're trying to get the ball forward. It means you're trying to open up opposition lines. But that's not really the case with Ilario Monterisi. His progressive passes are actually 2.88 per 90, which puts him in the 34th percentile. And his progressive carries, 0.25 per 90, puts him in the 17th percentile. So those aren't great statistics for his actual passing ability. Now, having said that, when you actually do the eye test and you actually look at some of the passes that he's played, he's certainly got it in his locker to be able to play those balls over the top and to be able to play those balls into feet. I've seen him do it with my own eyes. Play the ball over the top for a winger, release people quickly and do really well in those situations. So it could again be a case of there's people who aren't making runs. He could be playing in a very defensive side who aren't necessarily giving opportunities for wingers and strikers to go forward and get those balls over the top. It doesn't even need to be over the top, could be just progressive passes 10 yards or more into the opposition half, or at least towards their goal. So those are things to consider with a pinch of salt, really. But what you're really looking at is defensive capabilities. Although before we do go to that, successful take-ons, 0.31 per 90 puts him in the 74th percentile, which is crazy for a centre back, really. He's likes to take people on and go past them and come forward a little bit. But necessarily doesn't mean that he's always doing that. But the amount he does do it gets him up there with a lot of the top 5 league centre backs in terms of who does that. Progressive passes received. Now this is an interesting one. So progressive passes received. You're on the other end of a progressive pass. Basically, you're receiving a pass in the attacking half at least. That is going towards their goal. 1.1 per 90, which puts him in the 92nd percentile. So there are times where he does go forward, but without the ball, and he goes to try and create chances in terms of his movement and creating overloads down that right-hand side as he's a right centre-back. So this is something interesting that can be very symptomatic of a system. So you wouldn't see this very much from many centre backs, but because he's 1.10 per 90, that puts him in the 92nd percentile, so the top 8% of progressive passes received across Europe's top 5 leagues. So what's interesting about this is that because it's down to the system, you can't really compare it that much to anyone else, but what it does show is that he is willing to get forward if he has to as a centre-back, and that could be something that could be used, because considering his take-ons are decent, considering his progressive passes received are decent, he does seem like he's got an eye for going forward a bit like what you've seen with Joe Rodon, breaking the lines, going forward every now and again, charging into midfield and going, I'll take this on myself. He's got that in his DNA a little bit, is what I'll say about that. He's not necessarily at the moment, or has not been over the past year or so, been going forward massively, but I think he has the capability to do that. And that could be good, especially like I said the other day, if Leeds go to a little bit of a back 3 in games and you can allow him to be on the right hand side of that back 3 with Joe Rodon in the middle, he could then go forward and basically create a bit more of an overload on that right hand side. So now when we come to his defensive statistics, it's a little bit odd because 1.41 tackles per 90 puts him in the 46th percentile. Interceptions, he's in the 1st percentile, so in the bottom 1%, and blocks, he's in the 56th percentile. Clearances in the 48th percentile. So what you would say is distinctly average. But his aerials one at 2.51 per 90 puts him in the 75th percentile. So he's physical, he's combative in the air. Why then is his tackling statistics and his blocks and things like that so low? Well, that could actually genuinely be to do with good positioning. If you're forcing players away from you onto your teammates with your body shape, with your positioning, you can basically drop those statistics without really even knowing by forcing them to go a different way with body shape. And now body shape and knowing how to defend properly is a really it's not a dying art, but it's certainly something that takes a lot of practice, and having your body in the right orientation to stop them cutting inside, to stop them going outside if that's the case that you want to go for as well. So it's interesting to see that his are quite low. And so that either comes from he's not great at tackling, or he knows exactly what he's doing in terms of reading the game and forcing the players into places they don't want to go, where he doesn't even have to make a tackle. He forces them to turn around, go backwards and play a pass. Now, that's the statistic side of thing. When we go back to the eye test and the stuff that I've seen from him, he has really good positioning. He cuts out a lot of balls. It does seem like interception per 90, 0.49. I think that's a bit skewed. I saw multiple clips of him getting in the right place to cut a pass across the box off, to cut that cutback off and to get the ball away. And so I think the statistics are a little bit skewed in that sense. When you actually look at him and when you actually see him play, he's very clever, he's very astute in his defending, he knows what he's doing. He is only 22 years old, so again, big room for improvement, but he's the type of player who Leeds could get on a pretty cheap price bed him in slowly to that team and eventually bring him through into the first team if that's the case that they want to go for, or sell him for a profit. So that's just another option then at right centre back, because I do genuinely think that we're going to lose Max Verber. I think he's going to go to a German club. I think he's going to go to a German club, and I do think that we're going to need to bring in another centre back. So bringing in a 22, 23-year-old, like I've mentioned with Ilario Monterisi and Simone Canestrelli, those players could be the type of players you're looking at. That's why I'm looking at this kind of profile. Young Italian defender would probably do very well at Leeds United. So that's what I've looked to for these videos. I hope you've been enjoying them. If you have, leave a like on the video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching Leeds Lately, and I'll see you in the next one.